The principal characteristics of the public service would ideally include a lean, efficient, and motivated and productive civil service, well-trained staff, citizen-focused, should be citizen-focused and result-oriented, and should have a representation of diverse communities in the country. So even as we are aiming at containing the wage bill, there is also the need to also make sure that we attract and retain competitively sourced public servants. And the issue of the wage bill was highlighted by the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury in 2014, where he mentioned that the current wage bill and the average public sector wage trends are giving rise to crowding out resources that could be used in other development priorities such as social infrastructure development programs and projects. It has also given rise to large fiscal deficits, which constitute to macroeconomic instability, unsustainable public pension liability, and loss of competitiveness of the economy, which ultimately impacts negatively on growth and employment. And other key concerns that have been raised is that the public service wage bill is estimated at about 7.9% of the GDP, which is high compared to the international best practice of maintaining a threshold of not exceeding 7.5%. I think this has been said before. And the rising public service wage bill, which reached 48.1% of the country's total domestic revenue by the financial year 2017-18, demonstrates ineffectiveness of efforts to bring the wage bill below. So we are saying that the expenditure on personal emoluments is far above the set ceiling of the 5% of the total revenue. And therefore the rising wage bill reduces the effectiveness of internal and external borrowing to meet physical deficit as a means to promote economic growth. So the starting question is whether rationalization in the public service is a practical solution in the management of the public service wage bill. The gains from the three rationalization programs, specifically the latest two programs, with respect to public sector wage bill management have been limited as shown earlier. Apart from the changing political environment during the period, a key challenge that has been highlighted in past rationalization reviews is that rationalization requires an overarching policy framework that in essence would create an enabling environment to public sector organizations. They lacked an overarching policy framework to ensure that it was comprehensive. Other limitations of the exercise is that they have concentrated on the civil service and ignored the rest of the public service. The latest one concentrating more on the national government and the civil service, and the county government, and ignoring the state corporations and all the other areas. So what are the emerging issues? We find the duplications and overlaps in functions across the entire public service, like it was alluded to here earlier. Sometimes we have a function that is being undertaken by a state corporation and is also being undertaken by the national government and the county government. We've had prolonged freeze on recruitment at the national government level, alongside continued and controlled recruitment in other public sector institutions. The prolonged freeze on recruitment in the national government level has led to what I objected earlier, where we have an aging service. But then there is still continued recruitment in other areas, especially in the counties and in the state corporations. We have also continued and uncontrolled recruitment and retention of casual workers and other categories of staff at both levels of staff. We have areas where in some countries you will find you have casual workers of about 400 casual workers who are also drawing on the wage bill as opposed to what is on the payroll. We have also continued payment of salaries through vouchers and manual payrolls. Then we have non-conformity to norms and standards, especially disregard of authorized establishment and qualifications and experience during recruitment, where we have authorized establishment determined but being ignored. Then we have also the issue of the disregard of the role of the county public service boards, which leads to disregard of norms and standards. The way forward, therefore, we are saying that there is need for a strong legal policy and regulatory framework to secure adherence to norms and standards for managing human resources in the public service as provided for in Article 191.3 of the Constitution, and for implementation of rationalization of functions and other recommendations of the CAPS program. Then we are saying that the scope of the rationalization should cover the entire public service so that no duplications or overlaps of functions are there, and to optimize the gains made. And then we are saying that there is need for role clarity for county public service boards and closer working relationship between them and the executive. And also there is need for the right balance between bringing services closer to the people and staff establishment.
While the civil service was reducing in numbers, we need to be categorical that at that time it was focused only on the civil service. Meanwhile, the Teachers Service Commission and other parastatal and public service bodies who rely on the same exchequer were employed. So the objective of cost containment did not come out very, very clearly. And it's because of this that there was now a Civil Service Reform Program Phase 2, which then became a public service reform program, which now encompassed all public service institutions. And I think that is something that needs to continue, and we're happy to note that institutions such as the Salaries Review Commission covers all public sector institutions, and this enables all of us to have a helicopter view of the public service and what needs to be done. And I believe the issue of rationalization contains many other things. It includes re-engineering, it includes structures, and it includes looking at the end-to-end processes of service delivery. And that is what we need to be able to incorporate. I think we need to all pull together and understand what do we need to do so that rationalization can impact on the wage bill. It can also impact on improved service delivery. What is this we need to do? And that is where now we need to have a look at optimizing performance, re-looking at some of the recommendations that have been made here with regard to the tools and instruments of improving performance management. It is a fact that during recruitment of officers in local authorities, many of them did not meet the minimum requirements for employment in the jobs that they have. So what do you do about it? It was mentioned here, retrenchment may not be the answer, but what do you do? So first of all, a skills audit. We need to see what kind of skills are in each of the counties, and I believe CAPS has done that. And then you need to match these skills to, if you come up with proper structures, what kind of roles and responsibilities are in each of those positions. And I am suggesting that if we're not using any other methodologies, if we're going to use the issue of natural attrition, then there is that strong need of ensuring that natural attrition is adhered to as strongly as possible in terms of ensuring that if it is time to retire, then there's no need to rehire the same people to stay. You need to enforce the rules and regulations that you put there under the natural attrition strategy.
With the focus on allowances and the growth of proliferation of allowances over time, this created more of a dislink between job levels, status job grades, and pay, in that allowances were not taken into consideration in terms of relating pay to performance in the job evaluation exercise. There's a need in the near future, I would argue, to rationalize employment levels at the counties, since the counties, as many people have indicated, have tended to grow in terms of employment numbers.
For me, this discussion on rationalization is very important in those two regards, that as a nation we have said that formal employment is not something that we can manage. So we are pushing more of the young people to go to self-employment, but the public services are not as strong and conducive even for them to get income at that level. If you look at what our revenue authority has been saying, is that revenue has been increasing, in as much as it's not where the targets that the revenue authority wants, is that it has been increasing. But the fiscal space they are seeing is from the informal sector. But we see that the informal sector is not confident to pay the tax. A lot of tax evasion, a lot of tax avoidance, because they do not see value. Earlier speakers have also mentioned the fact that a lot of households in Kenya use a significant part of their income to get health services and education services from private entities. While right here we have been told that these are the two sectors that take a significant part of our wage bill. So then we must query, what are we getting out of the income and the tax that we are applying to these two sectors? We need to attempt first to have consensus, as we are doing here, to agree that this is a national disaster in waiting if not addressed. And all of us need to leave our egos aside and accept that as a nation, constitutionally, we gifted ourselves a people, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, because we noticed our greed as different sections of the public service. And so we say, let us cushion ourselves by having the SRC. But a few of us are still going behind to find their way. But how I ask and pray that within this consensus, we'll come and discuss and move forward without even going the issues of litigation.
There's also need to carry out some staff audit and skills audit so as to weed out the ghost workers and to clean our payroll system, and to also endeavor to look forward to embracing technology. We also need to have an inward look at our integrity issues, because some of these issues come up as a result of this animal called corruption.
The Constitution created institutions, and we never really looked at how much it was going to cost to run these institutions. So we have duplicity of functions. We are overcommissioned.
Everyone is talking about ghost workers, but nobody is doing anything about the problem of ghost workers. The challenge of ghost workers is a distortion in our wage bill, which we don't seem to have the political will and the courage to deal with.
So I think what we can take home there from here today is that we need to look at our governance systems, we need to look at our integrity and ethics, and we need to look at the culture that we have developed in this country in order for the leadership and for the civil service to be able to provide quality services to the citizenry.